Here are 4 major ways to get to Canada from your home country. My name is Eddie. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you free information on the 4 major ways to get to Canada, including their requirements and their good and bad sides. So I believe this video will help a lot of people, so ensure to share this video as well. Grab a pen and paper and let's go. Number 1, the visitor visa option. This is the cheapest way to get to Canada, and it allows you to visit families, friends, or simply for tourism if you do not have anybody here. You can also travel in for conferences, for sporting events, and so much more. Now, for most visitors to Canada, you are issued a 2-year visitor visa. For citizens of some other countries, including family members, could be issued up to 5-year visas. And for certain other citizens, you could be issued up to a 10-year Canadian visitor visa. Now, the first major downside to having a visitor visa is that you cannot work on a visitor visa. However, there's currently a temporary law that allows you, if you are eligible, to find a job in Canada while you are on a visitor visa, and you can become a work permit holder if only you find an LMIA-based job while you are here. So basically, for you to convert from a visitor visa to a work permit in Canada, you need to find an LMIA-based job. Now, what is LMIA? LMIA means Labor Market Impact Assessment. It is simply a paperwork that your employer will have to do that shows the government that when they hire a foreigner, it will not negatively impact the ability of those who are already here from getting jobs. So every potential employer has to do that LMIA paperwork in order to hire a foreigner. So if you are able to find an eligible job within your stay in Canada on that visitor visa, you can be able to convert to an LMIA-based work permit, and you can work here in Canada and ultimately transition to permanent residency. So that rule is currently on, and the government of Canada has extended it till February 28, 2025. Now, here is my advice. Not everyone may find it easy to get a job in Canada on a visitor visa. The 2 major professions that find it easier are usually software engineering, front-end and back-end engineering, those coding jobs. Those guys could easily get this LMIA-based work permit. Or those who are in the field of health, for example, doctors, nurses who have years of experience, they could also get this LMIA-based work permit. But if you simply have your visa, you have no work experience, you have no academic experience, I will not advise you to pursue this route because it might be a waste of time. Now, this is a special warning for those who are thinking about coming to Canada on a visitor visa and expect to find an underground or off-the-books job. Please be warned, because if you are caught, you could be deported and you could face a life ban from Canada, and your employer could face a fine of up to 100,000 Canadian dollars. This is the reason why no employer will want to risk taking a foreigner illegally to work in Canada when they have more than enough eligible candidates already in Canada. Now, that leads me to my second disadvantage of a visitor visa. The second disadvantage of a visitor visa is that you can only stay a maximum of 6 months per entry. So even if you have a 2-year visa, 5-year visa, or 10-year visa, as far as it is a visitor visa, you can only stay to a maximum of 6 months. Of course, you can go in and out from Canada as much as possible as far as that visa is still valid, but you can only stay to a maximum of 6 months per entry. Now, let's talk about the requirements for a visitor visa. The first requirement is for you to have your home ties, which is basically landed properties, job, or registered business in your name. The next major thing is the proof of funds. Now, for Canada visitor visa, there's no specified amount that you must have in your bank statement, but I would recommend that you have at least about $4,000 to $5,000 as an individual and up to $15,000 as a family of 5. Now, let's go to the next one, which is the study option. The study option is more advantageous than the visitor visa because it allows you to stay for a long time. But the study visa is the most expensive way to be in Canada. Now, for most people who want to study in Canada, your tuition fee, whether it's BSc, Masters, Postgraduate, your tuition fee is usually from $13,000 to as much as $25,000 a year. That's for most programs. Now, in addition to that, you also need to have the standard 10,000 Canadian dollars for your living expenses. So on average, most students who want to study in Canada would need from $30,000 to $45,000 to cover their tuition and their living expenses. Now, if you are planning to travel as a family on a study visa, you will just need to include an average of about 5,000 Canadian dollars per family member that is added to your application. So for a family of 5, it's going to be the student will have about 30,000 and each additional family member will be about $5,000, making it a total of about $50,000 for a family of 5. So if you choose to study in Canada, you can stay a very long time with your family members. Of course, the accompanying spouse of the student is eligible for a work permit, and the kids can choose to travel on their study permit or simply accompany their parents as visitors. Now, when you graduate as a student, you can transition to permanent residency through the major route called the Canadian Experience class. Now, the third major route is the work permit route. A lot of people choose this route because it allows you to stay for a long time in Canada, allows you to become a permanent resident, and is cheaper than the study option. But unfortunately, a lot of people who seek for this option, they do not have the requisite on-demand profession in addition to the work experience and academic experience. This is why a lot of people fall in the hands of fraudulent people. Now, the fourth major way to be in Canada is permanent residency. This is the best way to be in Canada because you are having your green card. You are not coming here to look for documents and all of that. But the downside to this process is that it takes a long time. Now, you can be a permanent resident through the major program called the Federal Skilled Worker Program, which a lot of people call Express Entry. Another way you can be a permanent resident is when you are sponsored by your husband, your wife, or your parents, or your child to become a permanent resident. Now, for the Federal Skilled Worker Program called Express Entry, it is a point-based program, which means you need to score a certain amount of points based on your age, your work experience, your academic experience, and several other factors. So you need to score an average amount of points and be in a pool from which you'll be selected based on your points to qualify to apply for permanent residency. Now, from what we have seen so far, the current score that you need to have to qualify for permanent residency through the Federal Skilled Worker Program is around 470 to 520. So a lot of people find it difficult making this score because either they are above 30 or they do not have the number of years of work experience or they simply have 1 degree. Now, how do you qualify to have lots of points? The first major way to qualify is through your age. Now, if you are 30 years and below, you score a huge number of points. But once you cross 30 years, for each birthday that you celebrate, you lose 5 points. Another way you can get points is through your academic experience. So if you have several degrees combined, it could fetch you lots of points as well. Another way you can fetch points is through your work experience. If you have relevant work experience, you could score points as well. Some people could also score points if they have brothers or sisters already in Canada. Now, if you want to double check if you have enough points, you can simply go on Google and search for the CRS tool. If you find out that you do not have enough points, you can boost your points by adding French language proficiency in addition to writing IELTS. So these are the major ways you can build your points and be qualified for permanent residency to Canada. So from all we have said so far, you can see that there are 4 major ways. Of course, there are so many other ways, but these are the 4 major ways you can get to Canada. You can see that the visitor visa option is the cheapest, but it's not usually guaranteed for a lot of people. And the downside is that you can only stay to a maximum of 6 months per entry, and you cannot work on a visitor visa unless you are able to find an LMIA-based job that qualifies you for a work permit. Now, for the study option, you can see that is one of the most guaranteed ways of being in Canada, but it is the most expensive. Now, for the work permit, you can see that though it's very, very good, but the market is saturated with fraudulent people, and there's a very, very limited chance that you will get a work permit. But if you are in the field of health or tech, you stand a good chance. And the fourth one, we have seen that for permanent residency, it is the best and the highest way to be in Canada because you are simply 3 years away from your Canadian citizenship where you have the Canadian passport. But the downside of permanent residency process is that it takes a long time and people usually wait from 3 to 5 years. So I believe this video has shown you a lot and told you a lot. So please ensure to share. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the comment section. Cheers.